From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
So to give you a little history about this event first, I'm a cartoonist, and for me, with graphic novels, they've been seen as sort of the kids section for a while, right? They got seen, and so my job, part of it is to, Gene said the kindest thing a compliment I've ever received, I think. You called me a comics ninja.
Yes.
Which means we got to sneak in, and we got to, it's an ongoing fight to bring legitimacy to graphic novels because they've earned it. As a kid, I started cartooning professionally when I was 12. I think it was to get attention. And so I was constantly, just going around, and my mom, to get her attention, I would do two things. I would take out a harmonica, and I'd walk up right behind her, and I'd go, she would take me in the corner, hand me drawing materials, and buy me all the cartoon equipment I wanted. She said, "Please stop playing." And that was the start of my comics career, and that's why I'm at the Washington Post today. Similarly, this event has its own sort of auspicious beginning. Graphic Novel Pavilion. This began really over beer, because there wasn't a special graphic novel event at the National Book Festival until the website Brightest Young Things said, "Hey, you guys need graphic novels." They took them out for drinks. They liquored up the National Book Festival. And kids, don't do this at home, but this is why we have what we have. Anyway, so here's to beer and bad harmonica. So let me tell you about Luen Yang. He's amazing. He started cartooning as well, I believe, about 5th grade.
Yep.
You were reading DC,
right.
You were reading Marvel, you had your favorites. Today he's writing Superman, so you can do one thing as a kid and grow up and do it. Yeah, big hand for Superman.
Thank you.
He did webcomics. This led to his great book, American-Born Chinese, which was a National Book Award finalist. He did Boxers and Saints, another National Book Award finalist. Last year, the library here named him the youth ambassador, the ambassador for young people's literature. So you've spent a year traveling to schools and being pelted with questions, the toughest crowds. And also last year, he was named a MacArthur Genius Grant winner recipient.
Thank you.
So tonight we will have Reuben and Pulitzer Award winners, we will have bestsellers, and we will have a bona fide genius with her. And as part of that, his new book, he has a series with Mike Holmes, and this is brilliant because he blends puzzles with comics, and it's the Secret Coder series. So, you should get this signed by him, you should buy it, any way you can get it. Travel to his home with these books out front, and maybe you'd sign it, So I have some questions. So what I want to know from you, Gene, you've spent the past year traveling, and you taught for 17 years or so. You were in school, so you had to convince, first of all, you're doing comics on the side. So as a comics creator, you're this rock star. Were you a rock star in the classroom to your kids?
No, not at all. I started teaching in 1998. I taught high school computer science for 17 years, and I remember the first few years that I taught, on the very first day of each of my classes, I would tell my students that I was also making comic books at home because I thought that would make them think that I was cool. Yeah. And it did not. Back in the 90s, those of you who are alive and who loved comics might remember this, but back in the 90s, especially the late 90s, nobody was reading comics. People were talking about how we were about to see the death of the American comic book industry. Marvel Comics, I think, declared bankruptcy at around that time. Mm-hmm. A lot of comic book stores were shutting down. So the students that were sitting in my classroom just didn't read comic books. I very quickly learned that I could not use comics to make me cool, so I had to just keep them separate. So for years, the way I lived was I would teach high school by day, and I would draw comics at night. They were totally separate worlds.
So at night, did you put on like a cape, or did you nerd out?
I took off my pants. I sat there in my underwear, and I drew comics.
Yikes. We'll save the rest of that one for the last session. Yeah. There's visuals for that. Speaking of visuals, I want to make sure to get to this. I think that's the first slide, right? Okay. This is you with pants on,
Yes.
fortunately. Thank you.
Yes.
But so one thing I want to get about, you've created a lot of characters, but you have to, they always say, draw from yourself. Even if you're creating a character that's nothing like yourself to speak to, it has to be something about you. Could you talk a little bit about what about you, finding your voice from who you are as a creator?
Yeah, I majored in computer science in college. I mean, I like computers, but also I have a Chinese dad, so I majored in computer science. I minored in creative writing, and I did take this one class that was super helpful for me. It was a creative writing class taught by a woman named Thaisa Frank, who is an award-winning author. She wrote a book called Finding Your Writer's Voice, a nonfiction book about how to write fiction, and that book totally helped me.
It's a great
I felt
book.
like the class itself was like a physical manifestation of her ideas in the book. And I really feel like during that semester that I was with her, that's when I actually found my voice. And it's exactly what you're talking about. Like every character that you write, whether they're a hero or a villain, even if on the surface they seem completely different from you, you have to find some sort of common humanity in order to get it out on
Absolutely.
the page.
Yeah, as I understand it, your parents said find a practical career, right?
Yes, my dad especially. My mom was a little bit more understanding, but my dad was...
Are they still saying that to you?
Yeah. My dad. I mean, it's hard to. It's just I can't compete. Like I have a younger brother. He was always better at school than me. He is now a medical doctor. He's an ophthalmologist. He owns his own clinic. Exactly.
Even here.
Is my dad out there? Is my dad out
Even
there?
here, you get your brother somewhere. He's like,
Yeah, it's awesome. My parents, my dad is very proud.
Okay.
Very proud of me.
Okay.
But like when something's wrong with his body, he's not going to call his cartoonist son, right?
No.
When his back hurts, he's going to call the doctor.
You can draw how it should look, but does he have a piece of paper, your brother, that literally says genius on it?
He doesn't need it.
Okay.
Because he can help with the back problems. He doesn't need it.
Okay. Well, I may make an appointment with your brother when we're done. So can we go to
totally
the next slide? So you've spent the last year, have this mission, reading without walls, and even within comics there are walls. But you spoke several years ago at the gala for this very festival about writing across cultures and diversity. And comics have this power, I have found, to speak to especially young people across cultures in a way, and the power of those images can speak across cultures. Could you talk about your mission?
So at the beginning of last year, of 2016, I was appointed by the Library of Congress as the 5th National Ambassador for Young People's Literature, which is amazing because out of all of my job titles, that is the fanciest sounding one ever. But the whole point of the position is I get to talk about reading. I get to talk about the importance of reading. So for the last year and a half, I've been traveling around America, around the nation, talking to different communities at libraries and bookstores and schools about books. I've gotten to hear about the kind of books that kids are reading. I've gotten to talk to aspiring cartoonists and aspiring writers. It's been a phenomenal experience.
Yeah.
So every national ambassador picks some kind of platform, something that they want to focus on. For me, that platform is Reading Without Walls, by which I mean I want everybody really to read outside of their comfort zone. I think all of us have a section at the library or the section at a local bookstore that we always gravitate towards, and it's awesome. I think it's great that we each have a home in books. But I also think that every now and then you got to go outside of your home because that's how you grow as a human being. I've been going around issuing what's called the Reading Without Walls Challenge. So here's how the challenge works. You pick a due date, and you can do this either for yourself or for your community. And by that due date, you just do one of 3 things. Number 1, you read a book about somebody who doesn't look like you or live like you, somebody who, at least on the surface, seems really different from you. Or 2, you pick a book about a topic that you might not know anything about. Or 3, you pick a book in a format that you don't normally read for fun. So if normally all you read for fun are prose books, I want you to try a graphic novel. If normally all you read are graphic novels and comics, then I want you to try something with no pictures in it.
Yeah. And did you have success? Did you get kids to?
It's been kind of stunning. I have to say, it's been stunning to see communities really embrace this challenge. I could not have imagined that things would go the way they did.
Wow.
My publisher, Macmillan, really got behind it, so they created these Reading Without Walls kits with bookmarks and with posters and with reading lists. And they gave away, I think they gave away 3,000 or 4,000 of them.
Wow.
In addition, they put all of that material on a readingwithoutwalls.com
Yeah. I was
website.
going to say, is there a website they can go to?
You can just go to readingwithoutwalls.com.
Okay.
They have a goofy video of me, but they totally put a ton of work into that. You can download all sorts of like printable materials. You can download certificates of completion. You can download book recommendations, and it's been awesome. So on social media, like on Facebook and on Twitter, I get all these photos from these amazing wall displays that teachers and librarians and bookstore owners have put together.
So you are legitimately cool now.
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
I have to tell you though, I it's a Catholic school, so they have these retreats for their students, and I went to a sophomore retreat to speak about a year and a half after I left the school.
Yeah.
And at the end of my speech, it's a speech that I've done before for that community. At the end of my speech, they gave me a standing ovation.
Wow.
And I was like, what? Where was this when I was an actual teacher here?
That's right. No, you had to leave. You had to leave to be appreciated.
I think it's just impossible to impress teenagers that you see on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah.
No matter who you are.
What about you have kids at home, don't they? Aren't they impressed when you come
They
down?
are not impressed at all. Like, I will give them one of my books as a galley, usually.
Yeah.
I'll give them a book and I'll say, tell me what you think of this.
Yeah.
And then they'll read it and they'll be like, it was all right, Dad, but Raina's so much better than you.
Raina Telgemeier. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just hope your brother doesn't start making comics because
me too,
we go
me
to
too.
the next slide. And maybe the one after that. And so talk about, you read DC, you were more of a Marvel kid, right?
I was.
But now Superman, and you're doing this amazing thing where you have a Superman of Asian descent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you talk about getting to this dream, living this dream?
I started collecting superhero comics when I was in 5th grade. The very first comic in my collection was actually a Superman comic. It was a DC Comics Presents. So to get to actually write Superman now is just, it's been nuts.
Yeah.
Like the 5th grader in me is just freaking out every day. It's been crazy. I was a Marvel kid though, growing up.
Yeah.
And I became a Marvel kid because I just thought back then DC was kind of dumb. I apologize if you're like an 80s DC fan, but I learned that there was this character named Aqualad in the DC universe, and I was just like, that's so dumb, such a dumb name.
So if they offered you Aqualad,
well, now I think Aqualad's kind of cool because of the Young Justice show. I think they made him cool, which is an impossible task. It just shows how far DC has come.
Absolutely.
So they made Aquaman cool.
But as we know with Marvel, is they had flawed characters. We know with Spider-Man and all that, you saw the flaws. And so when you're a kid, if they talk about Superman being just a big blue Boy Scout, he seems too perfect.
Yeah.
And Batman's pretty dark, but like there's something Marvel, you could relate to that.
Yeah, I think that was part of it too.
Yeah.
I have since become a huge DC fan, of course, not just because they give me paychecks, but also I think there's something very classic and iconic about DC that even Marvel, as great as that universe is, doesn't approach. I kind of think of like the relationship between the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches is kind of the relationship between Marvel and DC, right? DC being the Catholic Church.
Wow.
Like DC established the genre.
Yeah.
Marvel cannot be Marvel if DC had not originally put out this idea that Superman ought to be perfect.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
That's my theory.
I don't want to know how DC Marvel's going down in Ireland right now. That could be but let's go to the next one.
So this is a page from New Superman, which is my current project for DC Comics. It's a monthly series. Issue number 15 just came out, and this was not my idea. I did a 10-issue run on the main Superman title, and then after that, they called me up and they're like, they actually said this. They go, okay, don't get mad about this, but we just want to find out what you think. What do you think if we have a Chinese Superman character? And I was like, that sounds terrible. I don't want anything to do with that. That sounds like a horrible idea. And part of the reason why I was so allergic to the idea was they wanted it set in China. And I'm of Chinese descent. My mom was born in China, but I have no experience living in China. I'd be writing as an outsider, and I just felt like, because of my last name, people would expect that I was an insider, but I wasn't. I didn't feel like I could pull it off. But I had these meetings at the DC Comics Burbank offices, which are amazing, by the way. They have like in front of the offices, there are giant windows with DC characters on them. So like Jim Lee is the co-publisher there. He has Batman and Robin. You actually walk into Batman and Robin in order to see Jim Lee. Amazing. So I had these meetings with him, and at the end, this character, Kenan Kong, ended up like talking to me. And anytime that happens, if you're a writer, you know this. When you have a character talking in your head, you got to just do the project. Yeah. So I ended up doing the project.
But that's because the DC editors actually piped in his voice.
Yeah, that might be it. That might be it. That might be it. But it's been a ton of fun. I felt like they basically gave me a little corner of the DC universe to play in.
That is great.
And
that's the key, too. I talk to a lot of creators about a jumping off point is when your character starts speaking to you.
Yes.
So you felt like you got to that point where your Superman was speaking to you.
I got to that point.
And was your Superman respectful in how he talked to you? Or
No.
did he sort of slap you around?
He was a jerk. Yeah, he was a jerk. He was a jerk, and that shows up in the book. He's a complete jerk. We wanted him the opposite of what Clark Kent is today, right? So Clark Kent right now, he is the moral compass. But he didn't start off that way. If you read early Superman comics from the late 1930s, he actually kind of started off as a jerk as well. He used to be very full of himself. He would laugh at people who couldn't figure out his secret identity. He would love to like beat somebody up and then like sermonize at them. That was like his favorite thing. And then eventually, he throughout the decades, he's gone through this huge character arc that's taken through the 40s and 50s and 60s to become the character that we know today, to become this moral paragon. So I wanted Kenan Kong's character, his arc, to reflect that as well.
Well, let's run through these images to make sure we get through them. So there is. I think I'm going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, so that was a Chinese Batman and Wonder Woman. I asked if I could introduce the Chinese Justice League. Yeah. And then they were like, sure. And then I asked if I could make Chinese Batman a chubby Asian. And they're like, I guess. I wanted to do that. I wanted to do that because I feel like there are not a lot of chubby Asians in American media. You know what I mean? There's like the kid from Up, and that's about it. And they're always comedic. They're like played for laughs. Yeah. But if you look at like old school kung fu movies, there's always like this, there's often, not always, there's often like this chubby Chinese dude who everybody writes off, and then he just whoops you. Yeah. That's what I wanted Chinese Batman to be like. You wanted that stock?
Yeah. Okay. So secret coders, you worked in the industry for 2 years, you taught, but now you're tricking even kids who might not otherwise be into computer puzzles. You're teaching them coding in a way.
That's the hope. That's the hope. So this is my first explicitly educational comic. I took a lot of what I was doing as a computer science teacher on my whiteboard, and I stuck it into a graphic novel. So I'm hoping to teach kids in like 4th, 5th, 6th grade the basics of computer science through a graphic novel that I'm doing with a fabulously talented cartoonist by the name of Mike Holmes. Yeah. So Mike and I were originally decided to do 3 of these books, but the first one's done well enough that we're now doing 6.
Wow, congratulations. So so you taught and you decided to do a nonfiction book. And you decided at your school you would follow the basketball team for a season, right? Yeah. And at Bishop O'Dowd in the Bay Area and track that. And now I think have you been blowing deadlines as you travel the country?
I've been blowing deadlines. Okay. I'm so behind on this project. But these are some of the sketches that I did for this project. At that school where I taught, it's Bishop O'Dowd High School in Oakland, California. Right at the end of 2013, beginning of 2014, I had just finished a big project. I finished a graphic novel called Boxers and Saints, which up to that point was my lawn juice project. It's about the Boxer Rebellion, a war that was fought on Chinese soil in the year 1900. And I felt kind of lost afterwards. Yeah. I didn't feel like, I didn't know what story to pursue next. Yeah. I started getting interested in basketball for a variety of reasons, including my son joining his basketball team at his elementary school, and including Jeremy Lin. And then I got to know the basketball coach at the school. This coach, his name is Lou Ritchie. He is very different from me. So writers and cartoonists, we are famous for having low self-esteem. This dude does not have low self-esteem, right? He's like at least on the surface, he's a stereotypical jock, and I was a nerd. But as I sat down and I started talking to him about basketball, this really amazing story emerged. And I followed his team for a season, and at the end I was like, I need to do a book about these guys.
Yeah. And you said it was a very diverse squad, but you said...
Yeah, well, it's diverse in a certain way.
But the team also, some players encountered prejudice, and so you have all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in culture. I've always been interested in identity, and all of that played into this team. So the school itself is pretty diverse. There's no one group that has over 50% of the population, but it's still, like, the largest ethnic group is still folks of European descent, students of European descent. Yeah. The squad that I followed was almost all African American. There were only 3 players on that team that were not African American. There was a white kid, and there were 2 Asians. One who was Sikh.
Yeah.
And he was like the only Sikh on the court ever, like all the time, his whole life. He was always the only Sikh kid.
Yeah.
And I sat in the crowd watching them play. When I sat in the crowd watching them play, I was shocked at the kind of stuff both students and adults would say to the Sikh kid, you know, would yell at the Sikh kid.
Wow.
It was just, it was crazy. It was crazy to me. And so I do talk about that. He's one of the players that I focus on.
Wow. We have time for, I think, one question for Gene before we bring a couple more cartoonists out. Is there someone who'd like to step to the microphone and ask a question? I see a girl walking very purposefully right here. I love it. Hello. What would you like to ask, Gene?
I met you earlier. Cadence. Did I get it right?
Wow.
Yes. That doesn't always happen. My brain usually is terrible at that.
Nicely done.
Thanks for coming, Cadence.
Yeah. Can someone help her with the microphone?
If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
If I could have any superpower, what would it be?
Yeah.
I would want to be able to multiply time. Because if I did that, I could hit my deadlines.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice. Thank you, Kate. We have time for one more.
Do you think Bruce Lee would argue with you that he was the first Asian Superman?
Yeah, Bruce Lee, he would have a great argument for being the Asian Superman. I think it's hard to underestimate the effect that Bruce Lee has had on not just Asian America, but America in general.
I think he'd have a forceful argument, too.
Yes, he would.
Yeah.
He would have a very forceful argument.
Okay.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.